This is my most personal video yet. Let's talk about frustration. Hey, guess what, everybody? Today is my birthday. That's right.
Happy birthday,
And the kid you hear singing, that's my son Luke. Here's my birthday request. Stick around to the very end of this video. Shoutout Trivia is always worth it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and answer this question in the comments below. What is your birthday month? And most importantly, why is it a great month to have a birthday? Let me know in the comments below. It really helps the channel. I really like being a late September birthday. Fall is starting to creep in. Football is on TV. And when I was growing up, school was in session, which meant I was surrounded by my friends and classmates. Remember, let me know in the comments below. All you have to do is log into your Google account to leave a comment. Super easy. You've got this. Let me know. It's not a coincidence that I'm talking about frustration on my birthday. Birthdays are happy, joyous celebrations with candles and cake. But after all the candles are blown out and the sugar rush is over, my happiness has always seemed to morph into frustration on my birthday. Frustration with myself. You see, I'm 33 today, and for some of you, that's spring chicken young. For others of you, I'm old, ancient even.
I'm old! I beg your pardon? Oh, I'm like the Crypt Keeper! Okay, that's enough.
Classic movie. And just to make you feel old, kids that were born the year that movie was released are now graduating from high school. Happy birthday? Here's my deal. Not always on the day of my birthday, but around it, give or take a week, I reflect on my last year. And it's not that the year has been bad or not productive. They're usually great. Family is good, ministry is good, life is good. But I get this nagging feeling that I left a lot on the table. That there were things that I could have done, but that I didn't. Opportunities I had, but I didn't take. Things that God called me to that I left undone. And that leaves me very frustrated with myself. So what is frustration? Because we've all said it. But here's my definition. Frustration is the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be. If you're skeptical, let me convince you that that is an excellent definition. When you say that you're frustrated, whether it's a person or a job or even with yourself, you have an idea of what that person should be like, what that job should be like, or what you should be like. But that person, job, or even yourself, you're not what you think they should be. Maybe you get frustrated that your husband doesn't pick up his socks. What's the gap there? Well, you thought you'd have a husband that picked up his socks by now. After all, you tell him every day. But actually, you have a husband that leaves socks balled up all over the house. Frustration. Maybe you got frustrated by a boss that always seems to keep you in the dark. What's the gap? Well, you thought you'd be in a position where your boss trusted you and that he would be more open about things. I mean, you've been working there for years. But actually, you have a boss that hoards all the information and is very secretive. Frustration. You get the idea. Frustration is the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be. The bigger the gap, the stronger the feeling of frustration. Now, there are only two things that you can do to close the frustration gap. Move where you are closer to where you want to be, or move where you want to be closer to where you are. Because I believe that God created me on purpose for a purpose. I believe that God has endowed me with talent, skills, leanings, personality traits, and capacities. All the stuff that makes me who I am for that purpose. God has given me a certain potential that I have the capacity to achieve, but only if I strive for it. That's the birthday frustration that I always had, not living up to my own potential. I could have been here, but I'm still here. Sometime between my last birthday and today, I decided that enough was enough. No more frustration with myself. This is where I need to be, and I'm going to do everything in my power to live up to that potential. That's actually the reason that you're watching this. My YouTube channel is a part of what God has called me to do, to help people make the difference that they want to make, to be the men and women, the dads and moms, the bosses and the employees, the friends and the family members that God has created them to be. I'm going to close the gap. I'm going to narrow this gap. I have a spiritual obligation as a Jesus follower to live up to the person that God has called me to be. And you do too. So how do we close this gap? It's simple. We intentionally work at it. I won't sugarcoat it. This takes a lot of work. Now, I'm not just talking about the gap, but this specifically, YouTube. It takes a lot of work, hours and hours of work, but it's worth it. Nothing God calls you to do in your life will be effortless. God has not called you to an easy life. He's called you to glorify Him by making a worthwhile difference. Let me say it another way. You can either have an easy life or you can do what God has called you to do. I might be pushing a little hard here, but I want to be real with you. Your job is not all the work that God has for you. If all the work that you do is inside your job, you are missing out on your potential. A week is 168 hours. So let's take out the 40 hours that you work, and I'll assume you get 8 hours of sleep every night, and we arrive at 71 extra hours per week. It's those 71 hours that define your life. So what are you doing with them? Now, all the time I hear this, I just don't have the time. But that's not exactly right. When we say that, what we really mean is, I don't want to make the time. Now, this is not to make anyone feel bad, but I want you to think about that thing that you know that God has called you to do, but you feel that you just don't have the time to do it. Could you do it if it was your 9-to-5 job for 2 months straight? What about if it was your only task for 9 weeks? Could you accomplish it? I bet you could. Here's the secret. Spending 1 hour a day for a year is the equivalent of putting 9 40-hour work weeks together. What I realized is that I could either be frustrated every year or I could devote time, intentional time, to closing the gap from where I am to where I want to be. Casey Neistat has a great video where he illustrates this. Life is like going the wrong way on a moving sidewalk. Walk and stay put. Stand still and go backwards. To get ahead, you have to hustle. My decade of frustration was filled with so much Netflix and computer games. There was a long season of life where I would watch TV or play Civilization 5 hours a day. Are those things wrong? Not at all. But they didn't help me do what God had called me to do. No more. I'm closing the gap. You may have noticed that up to this point, I haven't used any scripture, but now's the time. The parable of the 3 servants in Matthew 25 is one of my favorite passages in scripture. In case you're not familiar, let me give you some of the relevant details. A wealthy master goes on a long trip, but before he goes, he brings together 3 servants and divides money among them. The first 2 servants double his investment. I wish they were doing my portfolio. The third simply hands back the money without any return on investment. Now I want you to see the master's response to both of these groups. To the ones who invested well, he says this, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." What they did was good, but it took faithfulness to achieve it. The word faithful in our world is usually used regarding marriage or spiritual things. But another word for faithful is consistent. The master is applauding their consistent hard work. But to the one who didn't invest at all, he said this, "You wicked and lazy servant." What he did was not good. And how did he get there? By being lazy. He didn't work. Probably binged Netflix too often. Now, as you know, parables are little stories with big meanings. So what is the meaning of this one? It's this, that God has given you everything that you are and everything that you have. So invest your life well. Be who God has called you to be. Do what God has called you to do and reach the potential that He has for you. It's your spiritual obligation. And trust me, you'll be less frustrated if you did. Hey, I hope you were encouraged by this video. If you were, would you mind sharing it? And be sure to subscribe because it's my birthday. No, subscribe so that you can stay up to date on all the videos. Before we end, shout out to Avery Maynard for getting last week's trivia question correct. Friday Night Lights was filmed primarily in Pflugerville, that's with a PF, Pflugerville, Texas, a suburb of Austin. Now here's this week's question. I call the parable in Matthew chapter 25 the parable of the 3 servants, but it has another, more old school name. What is the other name for this parable? Let me know in the comments below and you could get a shout out in next week's video. See you next Tuesday. Wait, not next Tuesday. Special announcement. You don't have to wait until Tuesday for another video. I've had the privilege of partnering with LifeWord, a great Christian media ministry that has a global reach, to bring you a second video every single week starting this Thursday, October 1st. I am beyond excited. Now I want you to know the content will not be the same as what you see on Tuesday. We're going to have a brand new series called Bible Tidbits, and the videos will be focused on helping you understand the Bible more. So, see you on Thursday. Grace and peace.